right, folks, good morning. Welcome to the PT on Ice Daily Show. Happy Friday morning. I hope your Friday is off to a great start. My name is Al. I'm happy to be your host today. Currently have the pleasure of serving as the Chief Operating Officer here at ICE and a faculty member in our fitness athlete division. Live just here on Instagram today. I'm in the airport changing flights here briefly, so sorry if you're somebody that watches on YouTube, but we're happy to have you here on Instagram, and we'll get this episode over to the podcast in YouTube shortly. So here on Friday, we talk about Fitness Athlete Friday, all things CrossFit, powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting, running, cycling, anybody who is actively engaging in an active lifestyle, helping those athletes and talking about topics related to those folks. Before we get started, I want to talk about Gut Check Thursday this week from our friend Troy Kress. 5 rounds for time, 21 goblet squats, a 53-pound kettlebell for men, 35 pounds for women, into 15 push-ups, and then 9 box jumps at a height of 24 inches for guys, 20 inches for ladies. So leg heavy burner, going to challenge your jumping ability under leg fatigue. Courses coming your way from the Fitness Athlete Division. This weekend you can catch Alexis Morgan out in Sandy, Utah for clinical management of the Fitness Athlete Pregnancy and Postpartum Live. Next weekend you can catch Mitch down in Pittsburgh for clinical management of Fitness Athlete Live, or the weekend after, August 13th and 14th in Columbus, Ohio, or up in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada, the same weekend, August 13th and 14th, with our newest faculty member, Joe Hanesco. Online, you can join us August 15th for Clinical Management Fitness Athlete Advanced Concepts. That's our Level 2 course in the CERT CMFA sequence. That course is only taught twice a year, and there are about 5 spots left in the current cohort. So if you're looking to move forward with CERT CMFA, you definitely want to grab a spot in that cohort. Let's get into today's topic. We're going to talk about steroid use in CrossFit, something that's not, I guess, talked about a lot in the CrossFit sphere, but not really addressed from the physical therapy side of things and kind of from the greater science and health community. So we're talking about steroid use. If you are a CrossFitter, if you follow the CrossFit community, if you follow specifically the more competitive aspect of CrossFit with the CrossFit Games, then you know that steroid use has become quite a problem, especially this current season, with about 40% of the individual athletes that were going to go to the CrossFit Games here next week testing positive for some sort of performance-enhancing drug. And then a lot of teams, so many teams in fact, that there will not be a team representing an entire continent because all of the teams tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs. So it has kind of exploded out of nowhere, especially this season. It's always kind of been in the background. So I want to talk about why is it a problem? Why does it seem to be becoming more of a problem? I want to talk about what are the drugs that are actually being used. Are they actually beneficial to the athlete? What are we talking about when we talk about performance-enhancing drugs? And then I want to discuss about the kind of general use of steroids in the general CrossFit population, the other 99% of us that go to CrossFit an hour a day and then go to work and are not competitive CrossFit athletes. So let's start with the first topic of why is it such an explosion this year? Why do we have literally dozens of athletes testing positive? In previous years, maybe 1 or 2 people blipped up on the radar, but literally almost 20 individual athletes who had qualified for the CrossFit Games this year have tested positive, and a number of teams from across the world, and 4 teams out of the top 5 from the South American continent with the Copa Sur semifinal event. So steroids are becoming more accessible. That's part of the problem. They can be bought online. A lot of these athletes, pretty much all of these athletes who have tested positive this game's season, are testing positive for a class of steroid called SARMs, selective androgen receptor modulators. So kind of a designer steroid drug. We'll talk about the actual physiology of that in a little bit, but that's the drug that a lot of people are testing positive. Now, there are a lot of performance-enhancing drugs underneath that umbrella. There's about 8 of them. We're going to talk about the big 4, but those are mainly the drugs that people are testing positive for having taken. So this new class of steroid is out there. It's not very new. It was created in the 1990s, but it's becoming more accessible. It's not technically illegal in the United States, so it's illegal in every other country on the planet. It is not able to be bought over the counter here. You cannot go to GNC and buy SARMs. It is available as a research chemical in the United States, and you can buy it on the internet. So despite it being illegal everywhere else, despite it being a performance-enhancing drug, it's classified. It's not allowed in any other sport. It's not allowed in CrossFit either. It's becoming more accessible, and it is quite easy to get, although it is expensive. It can be bought online. It is a designer steroid drug. It is designed for those folks who want to use steroids in competitive sport and do not want to get caught. So it has a very short half-life, 24 hours or so, with most of the metabolites being out of somebody's system in about 6 to 12 weeks. So it is designed for competitive athletes to take and cycle and avoid getting caught on a drug test with. So the entire idea behind the SARMs class of performance-enhancing drugs is to use it and try to be a competitive athlete and not get caught. That's why it was designed and created back in the 1990s. So when we talk about performance-enhancing drugs, we're mainly talking about drugs that improve our anabolic nature. So anabolic steroids, increasing our muscle mass, increasing our muscular endurance, increasing our cardiovascular muscular mass and endurance, increasing our bone mineral density, increasing the rigidity of our tendons and ligaments to generally make us a stronger, more robust athlete is the general idea behind taking steroids, and specifically this class of steroids called SARMs. So if you take them, you will have greater bone mineral density, greater muscle mass, greater strength, and as long as you keep training, even if you cycle off of them, you will maintain that a level above somebody who has never used performance-enhancing drugs. In particular, with the SARMs class of drugs, you may do a cycle of SARMs and then never do them again in your life. You will fly under the radar of any drug test you go on to take months or years down the road, and you will have that gain above other athletes for the rest of your life, provided you keep training and you keep pushing yourself to continue to get stronger and faster. Why do we think all these folks are testing positive this season? I believe it's just because it's a growing of the sport, and that there are now more events with more people at them who are now getting tested. Before you did the CrossFit Open, it was not a drug-tested event, it was a virtual event. You were invited to regionals, which was a drug-tested event, but there weren't very many of them, and the drug tests were random. And then you came to the CrossFit Games, and again, the drug tests were random. So there were less stages, less testing that occurred for folks to possibly get caught. As the sport of CrossFit, of competitive CrossFit, has grown, there are now more chances to get caught. There are more stages. There are quarterfinals, semifinals. There are now more semifinals events. Semifinals are now testing the athletes who win. Instead of performing a random test, they are testing not only the top 5 people who qualify for the CrossFit Games, but any potential person up to the 8th place finisher who might backfill a slot is also being tested. So simply more people are being tested. So this kind of suggests that this might have been going on the whole time, and we just weren't catching as many people because not as much testing has happened. There are rumors among the CrossFit rumor mill that the only thing different between this year and all their previous seasons for the CrossFit Games competitive season is that the director of the CrossFit Games, Dave Castro, is no longer the director of the CrossFit Games. And the rumor is that he had been informing people that they were about to be tested and given them maybe that couple of days they needed to get these drugs out of their system. I don't think that's the case. I think that when we look at who are the top folks on the podium year over year over year over year, sometimes for the past 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, especially on the team side of the event with Rich Froning, the Mayhem crew, it's the same people. So either they have been informed this entire time and they have gotten to skip out on the drug tests, and it's all this giant conspiracy theory to protect the top athletes in the whole sport, or that's not true at all. And I believe that's not true at all. I believe simply we have more events, testing is much more rigorous, the top 8 people are now getting tested instead of a random sample, and we're simply catching more people because it is a problem, but we are getting a greater sample size. With a greater sample size comes a greater chance that more folks will test positive. I do not believe that there is some conspiracy to protect the top athletes like Matt Frazier and Tia Claire Toomey and Patrick Vellner and all the people that you see in the top 3 or 5 positions at the CrossFit Games year over year over year. I simply believe it's a matter of numbers, a growing in the sport. More events, more testing has resulted in more people getting caught. I also believe it's now easier to access these steroids, and that as the sport has grown, the money in the sport has grown, and these athletes can now afford to use these performance-enhancing drugs. So that brings me to my second point. Let's actually talk about these drugs and what they do and what it looks like to get them. So we talk about SARMs, a selective androgen receptor modulator. We are changing the androgen composition of our body. So androgen is a chemical that binds with testosterone to create a molecule that is 1,000% more powerful than just testosterone. It is called dihydrotestosterone. You might have heard the acronym DHT. That is what we're doing when we take performance-enhancing drugs. We're basically supercharging testosterone molecules in our body more muscle mass, more strength, more bone mineral density, stronger ligaments, stronger tendons, stiffer ligaments and tendons, more explosive power, and in general, a greater athlete than somebody who is not taking these drugs. Our body naturally limits the natural production of androgen to avoid the accumulation of too much of this DHT molecule, because when too much testosterone is found in our bloodstream, our body naturally downregulates by producing estrogen, which has the opposite effect of testosterone. So men are much more susceptible to this in order to limit the regulation of testosterone and estrogen in our bodies at about a 1-to-1 ratio. A ratio of 4-to-1 or greater when you take a drug test is found to be in violation, and it's found to be that something in your body, something you are taking, eating, pills, whatever, is augmenting that ratio. So that is what is happening when we take these drugs. SARMs were created in the 1990s by a pharmaceutical company to be a designer steroid drug, to make people stronger faster in a way that would help them very easily pass a drug test so that they could get into higher levels of competitive sport, win, and not get caught. So it was entirely designed in a lab. It's different than just taking raw testosterone injections or something like testosterone replacement therapy, where we're just trying to take chemicals that are already naturally found in our body and put them back in us. These are intentionally increasing the androgen levels to supercharge our bodies, essentially. So they are a new designer type steroid. Instead of injections and cycling and all the stuff you may have heard about steroids, these are taken orally. These are taken out of a pill bottle like you might take a multivitamin or fish oil. Because of that, they're tolerated a lot better by our body. They're not as toxic to our body, and athletes can take more of these for longer with less side effects. So it's designed to be this essentially super designer drug where we get all the benefits and ideally none of the side effects. Less toxic to the liver, less toxic to our body, minimal or even positive impacts on our heart, which is contrary to previous generations of steroids, and they do not need to be cycled. You can basically always take them without side effects. So what are the types of SARMs? There are 4 major performance-enhancing drugs that athletes are testing positive for, that they essentially stack together when we talk about who is taking these SARMs. The first one, the pharmaceutical name is MK677. The street name is ibutamoren. This increases human growth hormone. This increases insulin-like growth factor without increasing your cortisol. What this does is it just increases our muscle mass, basically with no side effect. The second drug is very common. It has a very long chemical name, GW501516. It is commonly known as Endurobol or Cardamine. This mimics the effects of your body performing cardiovascular exercise. It results in a passive increase in cardiovascular capacity, greater speed with aerobic activity, greater endurance with aerobic activity, and overall increases your energy levels by increasing the efficiency of your mitochondria. So this makes you have more energy. You're more likely to want to train. Even without exercising, it will increase your cardiovascular performance. This is one of the most common drugs that is taken. You've probably heard that a lot if you've been following the news behind steroids and CrossFit. You hear that name, GW501516 or Endurobol. And the third one is MK2866 or Ostarine. This preserves muscle mass in the presence of increased amounts of caloric burn from cardiovascular exercise and or if you're in a caloric deficit. So what does this do? This doesn't help us build muscle. It maintains the muscle we have if we are now going to add in more training volume. Now, every morning we're going to wake up and go to the track and do running intervals to work on our running so that when a running event shows up at the CrossFit Games, I do better at running. So I've now increased more calorie burn, but I don't want to lose my muscle, and maybe I don't want to increase my caloric intake. So I want to preserve my muscle, preserve my leanness, but boost my cardiovascular capacity. That is the purpose of Ostarine. And the last one is RAD140, RAD140, or testosterone. This is a pure anabolic chemical, similar to taking testosterone, but again, at a magnitude of 1,000% greater. This is an anabolic steroid that increases your testosterone to estrogen ratio as high as 90-to-1. Remember, normal is 1-to-1, especially for men more so than women, and anything above 4-to-1 is illegal to have in your bloodstream if you are a drug-tested competitive athlete. So now we have 90-to-1 ratios. You've probably read some of these articles where these athletes say it's just good genetics when they are found to have a ratio of something like 50-to-1 testosterone to estrogen in their body because they have been found to have RAD140 or testosterone in their bloodstream. So together, these 4 drugs allow us to basically bypass normal physiology. They allow us to eat more than we would need to normally if we're trying to lean out. They will allow us to continue to add or at least preserve mass in the presence of increased workload and or caloric deficit, and basically allow our body to perform almost 100% efficient body recomposition. We can build muscle, lose fat, increase strength, increase cardiovascular capacity. For the normal person, this happens, but it's not as efficient. If you start to eat above your caloric maintenance level, you will add muscle mass if you're strength training, but you're also going to add a little bit of body fat. If you are trying to lean out and reduce your body fat, whether it's for aesthetics, whether it's to make gymnastics feel better or to make running feel better, you can go into a caloric deficit, but at the very minimum, you might be able to maintain your current muscle mass and strength, but you're probably not going to see improvements while you're in a caloric deficit. So you're able, with all these drugs, to get leaner while getting more muscle mass, while getting stronger, while improving your aerobic capacity at the same time. You're basically allowed to do all of the things at once by taking these drugs. Now, compared to traditional steroids, there aren't as many side effects. So many people just are taking this stack forever because it has a short half-life. Within maybe a couple of days, it can be out of your system. So if you know that you're coming up to maybe a semifinal event in CrossFit, you know that you just need to cycle off of it with enough time for most of it to clear out of your system, pass the drug test, and then we can cycle back on, cycle off before the CrossFit Games, and then take it throughout the entire off season. More muscle mass, more strength, faster cardio, be lighter so you can cycle gymnastics movements like pull-ups better, basically all of the gains with none of the side effects. So you might be saying, Alan, this sounds great. Like, why is this illegal? Like, it seems to have no side effect. Why isn't everybody taking this? And why don't we just have a new species of superhuman walking around? Why doesn't everybody just take these pills and look like a CrossFit Games athlete? Well, when they did clinical trials with this, they started on rats, and they found, unfortunately, that they had an unbelievable rate of cancer growth within the rat studies, to the point where no study will ever be allowed to be tested on humans because the results were so staggering in rats. So human trials were never allowed to be authorized. There are no long-term effects on people, and unfortunately it's still allowed to be sold as a research chemical despite that, but that is why it is not something that you can just go buy at GNC and take it before you head to the gym for the day. So again, this designer drug, designed to be easy to take, easy on your body, designed to be always taken, and designed with the intention that it's possible to cycle on and off these with minimal risk of getting caught in a drug test. So that's what SARMs are, that's what they do. Now let's talk about why is this so harmful to the CrossFit community, the CrossFit Games, competitive sport. The first thing is we don't know what this will do long term. We are looking at the first generation of human beings who have taken these drugs. We have no idea if we will see these athletes go on to have unproliferated growth rates of cancer in their body. We literally don't know what any of the long-term effects are. We see that it is untested on humans. We have no research trials. We can't recommend something like that for people to take. We literally have no idea what's going to happen to these people. We'll know sooner rather than later. We'll know in the next dozen or so years what the long-term side effects are, but for right now it's untested. So it's very risky waters to be in. Probably the most practical reason that we should not be doing these is some interesting studies that find that only 52% of the steroids that people purchase actually have the active chemicals that they think they're buying in them. That when people buy this stuff off the internet, half of the time they get nothing. They get oregano in a pill, or maybe something worse, some sort of nasty chemical filler that's cheap to pump into pills. And again, we don't know the long-term side effects on all this stuff, so who knows what these people are really putting to their body? They don't know. They have no idea what they're getting half of the time. So and this is the kind of the argument that's been thrown up by these athletes that said, oh, I took a supplement that I didn't know the composition of, and I think I had a contaminated supplement. Well, these drugs are very expensive. You're talking about probably thousands of dollars a month to stay on these steroids. It is quite the investment. And if these are thousands of dollars a month, whatever factory or CD shop that this stuff is being manufactured at, is not being manufactured at the same place where they make your whey protein and where they make your creatine. You're never accidentally going to have SARMs injected into your protein or your creatine or your pre-workout, right? It is way too expensive. No one would ever make a mistake like that. It is intentionally taken that these athletes are taking this stuff because we know it is so expensive and it is a very intentional designer chemical drug. The third reason is the side effects that people report from these are totally insane. Listen to these side effects that some of these athletes have reported. They said, yeah, I got super strong and fast, but here's the issues I dealt with. Mood swings, decreased libido, depression, cystic acne, decreased testicular size, gynecomastia, male impotence, literally destroying your sperm cells to the point where you can no longer have children. Gastrointestinal cancer, liver failure, penile atrophy, erectile dysfunction, dry skin, depression, anxiety, panic attacks, insomnia, memory impairments, and suicidal ideation. Those are terrible side effects. I'm out at penile atrophy, right? No, thank you. That's enough for me. Those are terrible side effects, and that's just what these people are reporting on kind of a case study basis. We don't even know. We can't do a larger term study to see what are the actual side effects in a given cohort of people. So those are pretty nasty side effects. You are paying a significant price. It turns out there are more side effects to these than originally marketed as this kind of safe steroid to take. My last point I want to make here, wrapping things up, is it worth it? If you are working with a competitive athlete, if you're even working with somebody who just says, hey, I want to see what is the potential of my physiology, is it worth this to take it? If I haven't dissuaded you yet at penile atrophy and suicidal ideation, or the cost, or the fact that half of the stuff sold doesn't have the active ingredient in it, it is a kind of a question of individual decision. If you are just working out at home in the garage and you just want to see how strong you can get, and you're not in a tested competitive sport, you're not competing against people and saying, I'm a clean athlete, and getting a paycheck for it, is it worth it? The question is, do the side effects outweigh the benefit? And the answer is, hopefully for most people, going to be no. When you let them know what those side effects are, it seems to very much outweigh the potential gain. For the greater CrossFit community, this is a giant problem. I think a lot of people have opinions of Greg Glassman, the former CEO and the founder of CrossFit. He turned out to be not such a good guy as far as racism and sexism issues go, but I think he was very correct back in 2018 when he formed CrossFit Health. And he said, I am doing this because we have gotten so far away from why I created this company, why I created this methodology of working out. This is not to be a competitive sport. This is not to be who can be the most lean, but also have the most muscle mass and be the strongest and be the best at everything. We created CrossFit as an exercise program for the everyday person to stay in shape in a fun way for an hour a day that's going to increase their adherence and have them keep coming back to the gym. That's why I created CrossFit. Created the CrossFit Games back in the early 2000s just to see where the field was at. Is this stuff working? Are people from around the world doing it the same way? I originally started doing it when he formed it and began training people in a CrossFit style in 1996, and that's why he created CrossFit Health. The idea that CrossFit is not for competitive athletes, CrossFit is not to see how in shape you can get and get paid for it. CrossFit is for busy moms and dads to get an hour in a day before they go take their kids to school. That this seriously harms the public perception of CrossFit. CrossFit already has a public image issue. That now this looks like a place where a bunch of cheaters get together to take drugs and race each other and exercise for money, right? That is just another issue that we now will have to face, those of us who are coaching, those of us who are on the physical therapy side of things, trying to promote CrossFit as a way for some of our patients to stay in shape after they leave physical therapy. This is just another brand image issue that we now have to deal with. That now when we say, hey, what are you doing for exercise? And they say, your patient says, I don't know. Say, hey, what about trying CrossFit? Like, the gym is right there. Like, I even coach, you could come to my class. Now we have yet another barrier to push up against. Now we have people who are going to say, oh, CrossFit, isn't that the thing where all those juice heads get together and race each other? No thanks. Like, I have a job and a life. I'm not going to get into that steroid fest over there. It's just yet another takeaway from the true purpose of CrossFit, which is to get people moving an hour a day in a way that's varied. The variance really has nothing to do, we know, with getting us stronger or faster. The variance has to do with people not getting bored, so they keep coming to the gym day after day. that we are now pushing back against. This is a competitive sport where we race exercise for money and not where we get together with our friends for an hour a day, do some heavy deadlifts or pull-ups, high five, and go live the rest of our 23 hours of the day. So this is just very disheartening to see, and I'm very hopeful that testing these people will discourage the next generation from trying to get away from it. And I hope that CrossFit continues to be even more rigorous with their testing. I hope they catch even more people. It will be very rough in the short term to see all these people get caught, but I think it will be much better for the methodology of CrossFit in the future if we can get all of these people out of the sport, or even if we could get rid of the sport entirely. I love the CrossFit Games. I love seeing the potential of the people at the top, but if I could push a button and get rid of it, I would push that button, right? Because it takes away so much from the work that coaches like me in the gym do, and that physical therapists like you all in the clinic, in the gym, do every day to get people moving, to help them overcome chronic disease, to have fun, to be strong, and to have the strength, the energy, the capacity to do whatever they want with the other 23 hours in the day. And the CrossFit Games and the steroid thing continues to take away from that and continues to make it harder and harder and harder to get people into CrossFit for those folks who come to our doorstep who are not already doing another exercise program. So I hope this was helpful. I would love to hear any discussion you have all on this. Again, these are very accessible drugs. They are expensive, but they're accessible. They work really well, but they do have nasty side effects. Half the time, what you buy, you aren't actually getting, and it is taking away, unfortunately, from the ultimate goal of CrossFit, which is just to get people in shape in a fun way and not to take it too seriously and not to exercise race for money. So I hope you all have a wonderful Friday afternoon. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. If you're going to be at one of our courses this weekend, I hope you have a great time. Happy to hear any discussion you all have about this. Have a fantastic Friday. Bye, everybody.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.